for myself to be president. Is there a second? Hearing no second, that dies on the vine, and I will go ahead and make another nomination. And I make this nomination because I feel strongly about the history of our rotation of our board. So due to that and my respect for Ken Falsgraf, I would like to nominate Ken for the office of president.
I second.
I would accept that nomination.
Okay. Call for question. All in favor of the motion to appoint Ken as president of the office of president of the Board of Trustees?
Jesus, aye.
Nay.
Mascon, aye.
Falsgraf, aye.
Brianna Taxoni, aye. I just would like to say thank you, Tom, for your nomination. That means a lot to me. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I think you've done a heck of a job.
Thank you.
We watch you grow into the position, so.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you. So after that, I no longer the president. Congratulations, Mr. Falsgraf.
A wonderful job. Moving on to item B, office of the vice president. It will be my honor to nominate Lester Mascon as the vice president.
I would like to second that.
I accept your nomination. Thank you.
Call the question.
Jesus, aye.
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 Brianna Taxoni, aye.
Falsgraf, aye. Office of the clerk, it will be my honor to nominate Mr. Tom Costin as the clerk of the board.
I'll second.
Call the question.
Let's see.
Jesus, aye.
Aye.
Mascon, aye.
Brianna Taxoni, aye.
Falsgraf, aye. D, appointment of secretary to the Board of Trustees. I'll make a motion that Dr. Eric Sahakian, superintendent, continues to act as the secretary to the Board of Trustees.
I'll second.
Call the question.
Jesus, aye.
Aye.
Mascon, aye.
Brianna Taxoni, aye.
Falsgraf, aye. E, selection of representative to the Antelope Valley School Boards Association. I'm going to take the liberty of asking someone to do this based on their past presidency. I would like to ask past President Taxoni to accept this role. If it's good for you, great. If not, great.
I would love to. Thank you.
Second on that.
Second.
Call the question.
Jesus, aye.
Aye.
Mascon, aye.
Brianna Taxoni, aye.
Falsgraf, aye. The next one is a selection of a representative to California School Boards Association Legislative Network. You'll be contacted sometimes to participate in votes or setting policies. I'll take the liberty, based on your experience with liaison work with communities, I would ask Tom to consider that role. California School Boards Association District Representative.
I appreciate that, Ken, but I think my time schedule is going to prevent me from doing that, so I suggest Dr. Jesus stays this.
Yeah, sure. I don't mind.
Awesome.
I would
I
second
second.
that.
Jesus,
Call the question.
Jesus, aye.
Aye.
Mascon, aye.
Brianna Taxoni, aye.
Falsgraf, aye. G, selection of representative Los Angeles County Committee on School District Organization. This is not laxed, correct? Could you explain this role?
Yes, not a problem. So Lake Coast County Committee on School District Organization is an independent body of 11 panel members elected to the body that makes recommendations to school board members in the areas of certain components, forming new districts, transferring territory among school districts, and the like. So it's a representative to get information from the Lake Coast Committee on School District Organization.
Past President Taxoni, could you entertain us with a recommendation on who you might think might be best for that role, even if it's yourself?
Does this role require like going to the LACO meetings and doing that, or is it just communication through emails and?
The latter, and correspondence through mail as well as email.
In my time on the board, I have never heard of anyone attending a meeting in person.
I can make time for that if you wish.
I would like to nominate Tom for that position.
I'll second that. Call the question.
Jesus, aye.
Aye.
Maskell, aye.
Brianna Texoni, aye.
Falls Graf, aye. So that's it. Thank you, everyone.
We have 2 more things to do.
2 more.
H.
Certification of signatures.
No,
Okay.
it's for the board representative of the Los Angeles County School Trust Association, which I would like to nominate Ken Spolter for that.
So, first off, I've filled that role for 2 consecutive years. Short of, most of those meetings are online, and you get different, how do I be politically correct about this? Some of the things you'll hear represent the downtown area or the different things, and they don't always represent the rural district stuff that we do. So that said, I navigate that okay. I don't have aspirations to become anything in that. I'd like to open it up for discussion about one of you others having an opportunity. We're all looking at you.
I would like to nominate Lester for that position.
Great, I'll second that nomination. Will you accept that?
Yes, sir.
Good. Call the question.
Jesus, aye.
Austin, aye.
Maskell, aye.
Brianna Texoni, aye.
Paul Jeff, I'm letting some of this soak in because it'll hit you sooner or later. Oh, what did I just do? Okay, so this is, okay, so that said, before I move into this, I want to thank all of you for your time commitments. I know that this commitment here is one thing. The clerk job, I will say, is probably the most important job in the district because you are going to sign every contract, you're going to sign everything, including DSA approvals on stuff that's done. So it's just, you'll notice that Yolanda will come to you every time. I'm glad you're sitting in there. I think your experience at the Acton Town Council will be particularly apropos here. Lester, you've done a great deal of work on policy and procedure. I know things are like that. It is a pleasure to have you down there, sir. You are a model of behavior. Brianna, I'm going to take the liberty of saying this right now. I've said this 100 times, that when you want to sit on the school board, you know, it's nice to be popular, it's, you know, all that. Everybody comes to you solving their problems, and sooner or later you learn not to do that. But when we step into that room back there, things get scary, and there are times when you are making decisions that you know is going to affect someone's life long term. And you've got a lawyer telling you, here's the law, boom, boom, boom. And it's kind of like a police officer pulling up on somebody and realizing this is just a dumb kid that made a mistake and I need to do what I can. You know what I'm talking about. And not just letter of the law, boom, you go downtown. If I would characterize the one thing that's been most important to me about your service that the public would never know, and file a Brown Act violation against me right now. But when it comes time to consider the underdog, the kid that needs another chance, the circumstances, how widespread they are, what the social answer might be instead of what the lawyer says, people, and get us to consider all sides of the view. And if there's anybody that's been semi-successful in softening me up, it's Brianna Taxoni. It has been my pleasure to serve under you as your vice president. Now go down there.
I appreciate that, and that means a lot because that is absolutely where my heart is at. And I will say, as you being the vice president, there were a lot of times that I reached out to Ken and asked for advice, and what would Ken do, and what procedure, what's the law, where would you go from here? And the guidance that I got as a president from the vice president, I would not have been able to do that side of it without you sitting in this seat. So I very much appreciate all of your help that you've given to us.
Thank you. That's a lot of rules and following the process. So your role is
Thank
much
you.
bigger. And I would ask that as we all move down one seat and the immediate past president takes her place as the first voice on the board when we discuss issues, that is such an important thing to have the person who is immediate past president down there frame the conversation. You all are going to see a different Ken when Ken is the board president. I run the business. I support the superintendent. These 4 positions make the decisions. I don't like hang votes. I'm not here to exercise anything other than to develop the consensus of my board. You will find, if I think that there is something that's not gelling, where we're going to have 2-2 votes, expect that I will ask the superintendent if this has been considered enough. I don't expect everybody to vote yes all the time and have 5 people, rubber stamping things, and there is individuality. But my role is to support the superintendent and to establish consensus on this board, and that comes with decision making of those 4 people. So please join me as your past president goes down to the end there by giving her a round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you, Max. I am very excited to come down here. Hello.
Give me less time to think about what you're going to say.
I've never sat in a seat so
down.
really excited to sit next to you. I started there, so.
That seat sucks.
Oh, right next to Aislinn. No, I'm gonna change that. He's gonna switch. He doesn't.
Go to closed session, where we may discuss conference with labor negotiators, public employee discussion, discipline, dismissal, and release, conference with legal counsel, or student matters. Do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
A motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Call the question.
Brianna Taxoni, aye.
Jesus, aye.
Aye.
Matt Scott, aye.
Paul Sharp, aye. We will adjourn to closed session at 5:58 p.m. I would ask that we reconvene the regular meeting at 6:26 p.m. And I will make a report of action taken in closed session. The Board of Trustees has unanimously agreed to staff's recommendation for stipulated student expulsion for student number 2002021. Again, that was unanimous agreement of the board with staff recommendation. I would ask the board to entertain me on this recommendation, seek a second. I would like to see us put the board member comments to the end of the meeting, each meeting. We carry on with the student comment, the superintendent's comment, but put the board member comments to the end of the meeting where people who have business to do can go home, watch, do whatever is on tape, so there's no effect per se, but the board member comments would drop into the agenda before adjournment, before future agenda items, and before the calendar. Do I have a second?
A second.
Call the question.
Brianna Texoni, aye.
D'Souza.
Aye.
Mascon.
Paul Draft, aye. Thank you very much. Hazel, we'll be pleased to hear from you now.
Are we on?
I'm out. 6A is student representative to the board.
Meeting participation. Their participation.
I believe this is what we spoke about.
Brianna, could you give us the liberty of introducing this, please?
I will.
Hang on just a minute. This is an initiative of Media Past President Taxoni. Thank you, Brianna. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is something that I'm actually really excited about. Our student representative to the board, let me back up. I went to the California School Board Association Annual Education Conference where I get to sit in a multitude of different lessons and hear from different expert board members and some really intelligent, awesome people that explain different parts of our ed code and different ways that school board members or school boards do things. One of the lessons that I sat in was student board member rights. Our student board member has rights under Ed Code 35012. Those rights, they are allowed to cast a preferential vote. So meaning every time that we vote, we don't start with this seat, we will start with our student representative. And that doesn't go into the vote. She can't cause a tie. It's a preferential vote. So she's going to let us know through her vote every single time we vote on something, what her preference would be. And then the board casts their official vote. Every time we have a discussion, she gets to start our discussion. And I did have this conversation with Aislinn last week. She doesn't have to have a discussion. She can say like us, oh, I don't have anything to say. But when she has something to say it. I welcome it and we all welcome it and I'm very excited. I know you have a lot to say, so I'm very excited to hear that. She is to receive any material that the board receives that's not confidential. So she's not going to receive student matters, but anything that the board receives, she's to be treated like an equal to the school board and like a colleague to us. So anytime that we receive information, Aislinn is to receive that as well. Any invitations that the school board receives, invitations to ASMO, invitations to anything going on in the district or the community, Aislinn is to receive invitations as well, so that she can be our colleague and attend alongside us. So I'm very excited for that as well. So I just want to make sure that Aislinn and every student representative in the future is definitely taking a more active role in fulfilling their rights as a school board. And this isn't something that we're allowing you to do. This is something that you have a right to do. So I'm very excited about that. Also, I don't ever want you to feel from anybody, from us, from staff, that you have to run your presentation through somebody and be censored from somebody, either the school board or staff on campus at all. You are here, you were voted here by your peers for a reason, because they trust you. We trust you. We trust you that you're not going to come and slander somebody. You're trusted to make those decisions, and I don't want you to ever feel like you have to run your presentation through somebody else. That is nowhere in Ed Code that you have to do that. It's nowhere written down that you have to be censored by anybody. So please don't ever feel like you're censored by anybody. And if you feel strongly about something, I feel strongly that you will be able to bring it to the board in your classy demeanor that you always bring. And I just want you to know that we look forward to hearing that every school board meeting. So those are some things that I learned about our school board members' rights. So I just wanted to change our meetings and include her more. So that's why I asked for that to be put on the board meeting, the board minutes.
Let's open this up for discussion in order. Aislinn, please.
Thank you, yeah. I'm really excited for this new opportunity for not only myself, but all future student representatives. I think it's a big change that I think a lot of people will really appreciate. Thank you for going out of your way to gather all this information and give me this opportunity. And thank you for the board members for, having to now put up and listen to me. But that's okay, because now I have the short end of the stick speaking first. That's what I'm talking about. So excited, thank you.
You like how I passed that? I don't have to speak first. She has to. I've said enough, so I have no more to
Brianna,
say.
it is your turn to speak. Anything, Brianna? George?
So thank you, Brianna, for actually bringing that to our attention. I think it's great changes. Like, I look forward to hearing your input and all the good stuff you have to say.
So every student representative sits there, I always say, look at our bylaws. And I told you the same thing, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Did you look at the bylaws?
Yes, I did.
So the bylaws are not Ed Code, but they're the rules that we follow, and the Ed Code obviously supersedes our bylaws, anything in Ed Code. So I'm going to suggest that since our bylaws are a little weak in this subject, although they do explain that you are an equal board member that cannot vote, apparently you have a little bit more rights than that. I'm going to suggest, Mr. President, that we put the bylaws up for review in this section, that we get them up to speed with the Ed Code and clarify some of the roles of the student representative.
That comment was taken, or can you wrap up your comments?
That's it.
Lester?
I think it's fantastic. Thank you, Brianna, for doing that. Aislinn's super looking forward to everything, all of your input. Yeah, it's exciting. Well done. It's great.
Brianna contacted me in December about this after she returned from the California School Boards Association, went to a couple of training sessions. It had been brought up before, so everybody fight over who takes credit for it is meaningless. Thank you for being here. Staff, I'm not a proponent of the board telling you how to run your agenda. I think you heard a strong suggestion from your clerk, and I would take that home. Take that discussion offline and figure out when it needs to be agendized, if that's what you choose to do. I have no comments, but congratulations. You continue to serve us well. I've noticed that your reports, you try to incorporate all of the campuses and all of the students, top to bottom. To Lester's vision, you start when you're a little kid and you walk the stage with a plan as an adult. And you setting the model for this role, there have been excellent student reps before that. my advice to you is to kind of keep that in your mind. How do you show the kids that we're actually up here talking about where they're going? We're disassociated old people, and you represent a hope to them, so thank you. Any more? I always ask to cycle around just in case people are getting rowdy. Nothing? Good. 7, business. First interim report for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Can I get a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Superintendent, staff.
Thank you. Before I turn it over to Mr. Vensko, the first interim reports are compared to adopted budgets, and this first interim period of time covers July 1st through October 31st, and Mr. Vensko has been working on this presentation for our trustees as well as our district community. So, Mr. Vensko.
All right. Do we have the clicker guy or clicker? I'll be fairly brief, but so tonight we'll be presenting on the 2023-2024 first interim report. If you want to go to the next slide. Tonight we're going to go through the budget cycle. We'll go through what planning factors or assumptions that I used for the first interim. We'll talk about what has changed from adopted to first interim, and then look at them by the numbers. Move on to our multi-year projections, finish with next steps and considerations, and then finally take questions from the board. Report budget cycle. So this is the second budget report for the fiscal year. As mentioned by Dr. Sahakian, the actuals that we use is through October 31st. We typically during this cycle, we bring in over carryovers that were from prior year. We will update our enrollment projections for actuals that we received through the year. We'll update our staffing projections based on what has happened over the summer. As you remember, we built adopted budget back in May. So now we have approximately 5 months worth of data that we didn't have back then. So we are on our second report. So moving forward, if you don't mind. So planning factors. So we build our first interim reports or any budget report based on a set of data, and it's usually good. This data is old already, right? So our planning factors are always changing. But I wanted to give the board a look at what we use to build this budget. So in the orange columns, you'll see what we are using. So the nice thing is we have enrollment is up about 24 students from where we had projected in May. And then I've carried that forward flat throughout the year. Our actual ADA, we're seeing about a 1% increase in attendance from this period as compared to last year. So I have also updated that ADA for attendance rate. One important thing to note why attendance is important. 1% of ADA equals about $125,000 of funding. Not to mention the student loss of education, but funding resources. We're losing about $125,000 for every percent that we are not at 100. The next piece is our COLA. So where I've highlighted, this year's COLA is still funded at 8.22%. And we usually use the School Services of California dartboard to project out-year COLAs for the LCFF funding. So what you see there, the 3.94 and the 3.29, is what was projected back in May. However, we've known that the state has gone through some pretty dire tax receipts, and the economy is not looking so great. We've seen in the news there's about a $68 billion deficit for the state. And so that 3.94% and 3.29% are now looking more like 1.27 and 1.3. So I will talk about how that will be affected later on by the numbers, but I just want to point that out. And then average unduplicated count, as we've been, that's another piece of our funding. You can actually see we're increasing in that because we're collecting our alternative forms, and those that are, this generates a little bit of extra funding. So we can go on to the other side of the coin, which is the expenditure planning factors. I'm not going to go through this too much. There really hasn't been much change from May to now. The only two pieces are the PERS rates actually have increased by about 0.5% each. This is the employer contribution rate. So that is reflected in our out years. And then you can see our certificated, classified, and management confidential FTE. Again, no cuts are projected as you see. We're keeping things flat, assuming that our enrollment stays flat. All right. So, and then before I go into the numbers, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll go through the major changes. So on the revenue side, as I mentioned, our ADA and our enrollment is up. So that is contributing to about $414,000 of additional revenue. On the federal side, we have about $720,000 increase. Again, as I mentioned, this is the time that we budget our carryovers from prior year. You recognize the revenue, and then you can see that on the other side, there's an equal or similar increase in expenditures. State revenues are also up about $740,000, and there is a factor of about 4 different one-time funding that is contributing to that. And then on our local revenues, we've actually increased about $500,000 due to an increase in interest revenue. As you might know, if you're getting interest at your bank, you're getting a lot more interest in the money on your bank. So likewise, the school districts get to partake in that as well. So, and then there's also a priority rental from the Aadusd Elementary School that was not recognized last year, since it was a new agreement that was first year was last year, so it was a delay in that recognition. So there's that. Expenditures, we have an increase of about $1 million, and that's due to budgeting positions that we did not have necessarily thought of during the year. So we have 2 TOSAs, partially due to the reorg and the VAPA TOSA. We have an additional SEC teacher, and then budgeting half years for a coordinator of HR and our potential VHS principal position. And on the classified side, we have 2 social workers and 4 FTE of instructional aides. The 2 social workers are part of that mental health grant that we are applying. I have not found them yet, but they are still there, so they get budgeted for about half of the remaining year. And then benefits will move along with the salaries. As you increase salaries, you increase benefits. Finally, books and supplies, again, have increased about $500,000. Again, partially due to carryovers, and then what I've been going through actuals to date. And then services, also the same type of thing. We have our ELOP services, because we had an increase in ELOP revenue. The subsequent, another flip side of the coin, the expenditures have also been budgeted to go up. And then actual POs to date for services like sped contracts or any services that are done via maintenance, etc. One piece about this that I just want to mention is, and you'll kind of see this as we go to the next slide, is that, and you can go to the next slide, that's fine. You'll notice that most of the differences from adopted to first are on the restricted side. And why that's important is that our unrestricted side is where we have more control over. The district can spend money how the board and how the staff see fit, whereas the restricted, they're set by each of those programs, right? And so those have specific type of rules, they have different expenditure rules. So having said that, we're looking in the right direction in terms of our going to a more balanced budget. We're actually to the good, about $182,000 net change on the unrestricted side. And then our net change on the restricted side for this year is only about $77,000 for that. Okay, so that's this current year, but part of the budget process is to provide a multi-year projection outlook. And part of that is to determine what type of certification we give our report. You have 3 different types of certifications. You have positive, qualified, and negative. Positive being that the district can meet its financial obligations for the current and 2 subsequent year. And that is what the multi-year projection allows us to look. So if you want to move to the multi-year projection, you will see that we do in fact meet our financial obligations. And by meeting financial obligations to the state, that only means we meet the minimum required reserve, which is the 3% or 4%, depending on your ADA as a district. We do meet that and well exceed that, and you'll see on the next slide. But what I do want to point out in these 2 slides, so again, I break this down by unrestricted to restricted. As I mentioned, on the out years in 24, 25, and 25, 26, I am using that higher COLA to project our revenue. So as you can see, as we move forward, we're getting close to a balanced budget, which is great. However, when, as I mentioned, we'll be seeing that COLA drop potentially from the January budget, and that can have some, that'll have an effect on our revenues and potentially what our net change in unrestricted or restricted side of the house. So moving on to the next slide, this will show a combined, and I'll show you where I have kind of, what I've done is I've assigned those dollars that we see as losing funds. So as I mentioned, that's about a 3% drop in the COLA, which equates to about $360,000 loss of unrestricted revenue. And then in the out year, it kind of compounds, right? So you're going to see that $360,000 continue to next year, and then also you're going to lose funding because the second year out year COLA is now 1.3%. So these are just to show what the effects are, and LACO has given guidance that said, use what the dartboard and what the School Services of California and what the major organizations have out that are already published, but keep in mind, and they recommended to do an assignment to show not only the board but the public to see what affects what it would look like on our revenue. As you can see, even with those assigned dollars, we're still at a pretty healthy reserve. But again, the reserve is only one-time funding, so we just have to make sure that we are frugal and make sure that we know and plan for these types of potential blips or longer. And then finally, so as I mentioned, we're positive, meeting our minimum 3% reserve. And then, so what's going to happen next? So we'll finally get an official COLA projection for next year, if you want to move to the next one. At the January governor's proposed budget, usually comes out with that around the 10th or so of January. And this will talk about whatever revenue projections that they see for Prop 98, which is what we fund with school districts. Maybe he will cut current programs at the state level. We won't really know. He's been kind of tight-chested on what he might cut or might not. What sort of budget cuts that he might propose, we're not sure yet, but that will come out in January, which we will then incorporate into our second interim report in March. Again, we always update, for our second interim, we will update our salaries and benefits. We continue to monitor enrollment and attendance closely because that will affect our next year our next year staffing needs. But overall, I want to point out is, will this downturn in the state economy be a blip or will it be something longer? We won't know really until probably April because of the delay in tax revenues this year. We should know in April of next year how this current year has gone. So with that, I thank you very much for your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Hazel, let's start the discussion with you.
No discussion, thank you.
Brianna?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for putting this together and coming in on winter rate.
George?
No questions. Thank you. Thanks again.
Tom?
The ADA, obviously it's significant, the 1% change makes a lot of difference. Where are we, and this question isn't actually related to the budget exactly, but what do we look like at other districts? Are we doing well or are we not doing well in terms of how the community around us is doing?
Sure, so I can't speak to the districts necessarily around us. I haven't looked at their ADA rate, but I will say statewide, between pre-pandemic to now, almost every district has lost about 5% in ADA percentage. Where I was from in Newhall, we were at about 96.5, and they dropped down to about 91.5, 92. So it's not just here. We're actually, I think the averages used to be like 97 for elementary, 96 for middle, and then for unifieds like ourselves was like 94, 95. It was like a kind of a target rate to hit. So you can see overall we're down 5% because we used to be up at that 95, 94%.
So we have some work to do there then.
Absolutely.
Thank you for putting that all together, always professionally presented as usual. Couple questions following on with Tom, the 88 trend,
Jones and Dr. Chamberlain. I know Dr. Chamberlain, Ed Services Director, that is, we've identified the need for second semester, especially around spring break, and so that's going to be a focus for our principal meeting starting in January. So thank you.
Again, I always appreciate your focus on the numbers. I know there's people behind all of this, there's kids behind all of it, but there's a lot of other people that are focused on that. So good clarity on the numbers and revenues and costs are very much appreciated. So the book service and supplies increase, that was a big increase. Is that an ongoing or a one-time increase?
So usually it's a one-time because of the carryovers of the federal dollars. So they'll get carried over because your revenues have to equal expenditures on federal funding.
Okay.
So usually you kind of,
Money-
budgeting term, you budget it there, it may fall into supplies, it may go into services, it just kind of, it might fluctuate, but that's kind of like a placeholder usually.
Not a recurring expense.
But it wouldn't be a recurring expense, like your regular funding, you know, would be the recurring part. The carryover would not, and it would get pulled out if it was a year.
As in previous years, and your predecessors have always forecasted a decline to our reserves. It always ends up turning out the other way. So we're looking forward to you finding, you and the superintendent finding enough money to turn that into a positive. For me personally, and take this as a recommendation, not a request or instruction, seeing the previous 2 years in a report like that are very valuable, so you can identify trends in that may have gone in different directions. So looking at your budget versus how it actually turned out, forecast versus actuals, for the previous 1 year at least, potentially 2 would be nice. Do we have any reserves sitting back for charters, or are there any liabilities sitting out there that we need to know about?
No, there are none like that, no.
That's good.
Yes.
Any other exposures that we have that you're reserving for that
Sir?
nothing else sitting out there that's
No.
ghosts in the closet or waiting to jump out at us?
No, anything that is pertinent is brought to, you know, I'm not one to hide that, but no, we do not have anything, on the horizon, so to speak. Yeah,
Is that it?
That is it.
Is everybody good? My colleagues have covered any questions I would have, and I would like to compliment the superintendent on your ability to have staff. B, Resolution 2324-12, naming district representative for state allocation board. Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
Mr. Vansko.
All right, so this is more or less a formality, but the OPSC requires, there are times when they will send out surveys or have reporting that the district must report, like something to the effect of, do you have any unused property or anything like that? And technically, the only people that can respond are those that have been certified by the board as to represent the district. The superintendent is automatically a representative for the district, but it's always good to keep your contact information up to date with the OPSC for any type of reporting, so that way the superintendent isn't the only one that is providing that report. So this is just a resolution to add myself as part of that representative group, and that's all I have.
That's the staff recommendation.
That is correct.
Call the question, Aislinn.
No questions.
Moving down the line, please.
Brianna Texoni, aye.
Yes, she's aye.
Aye.
Mascot, aye.
Falls, you have aye. C, GASB 75 actuarial valuation report as of June 30th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Could you introduce this, please?
Absolutely. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board requires districts to provide evaluation of its retiree health benefits, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Vensko to provide the rest of the information.
For sure. So the GASB report, as mentioned, is a requirement. It used to only be every 2 years, but now they've added a second part to it where you now have to do an annual valuation. This really doesn't affect the budget per se as you see it for the SACS report, but what it does show in our audit report, so our financial statements. This is more of a financial type of actuarial rather than actual expenditures that the district hits. This is done by a third party because they have the expertise to do these actuarial studies. They unfortunately are not able to be with us tonight to answer questions. They were scheduled to be here on Thursday, but if you do have any questions, I'd be happy to forward to them to get further clarification. And this item is just to accept that report for the district.
I think there will be a question about what this number means long-term. Aislinn?
Discussion.
No discussion?
Moving down the line, please. Lester, do you have anything?
I don't have anything else.
I do. Uh-oh. What does this number mean? Is this an unfunded liability? Is this what we're talking about?
Yes, sir. This would be technically an unfunded liability set by how actuarially they feel there are other post-employment benefits, such as retiree health benefits. Sorry, I should have been more clear, but yes.
No, good.
But yes, it is technically an unfunded liability, but an out year.
Some of us work for governmental agencies, so we know what this means and when we're negotiating. When is this today? Is it estimated? Is it annual? Is it collective?
This is like a 30-year estimate of the liability. So typically what you will see on your SACS report is the pay-as-you-go model, and that is reflected in object codes 3711 and 3712 of the SACS report. And that typically is for the actual benefits for the retirees of that given year. So that's the only thing that gets put into the SACS reports, but this is the total over the next 30 to, I forget the exact number of years, but it's a long-term projection of, if we had to pay for it all right now, this is what we estimate the dollars to be.
So over a 30-year period, you are looking at $1.17 million.
Correct.
I am familiar with agencies that have looked to buy out through actuarial employee long-term health benefits. I've seen people looking to turn people into at-will employees, all those kinds of things. There's nothing in here that suggests any of that. Here's a quick question. It's deep. What if I suggested to you that amount, the unfunded liability, were to be carried through your budget over X number of years? How would you respond to that?
So there is that option within that report. They do give like an estimated amount of again, I don't know exactly the number, I didn't memorize that one, but they give you an amount that you would, if almost like as a loan, right? So if you paid this amount and set this amount aside over X number of years, you would be able to have that in your budget. So
is there a penalty for doing that if you set that money aside and then all of a sudden you need to, all the funding runs out, we have all kinds of, I don't want to get into detail here, but you have all kinds of people that are being funded by grant funding, all that goes away and suddenly you want to dig into the actuarial fund. Is there a penalty?
So it depends on where you fund it, right? There's different methodologies. There's a fund, there's an irrevocable trust that you could do, in which case then you would not be able to move the funds out of there. But if you just assigned those funds or even committed, the board could take action to move those potentially out of that particular fund.
So I appreciate you've dealt with me for a number of years when I sat down there, and again, I explained my role will change, but in the next report, could you anticipate reporting out how you would cover that and what the long term of doing that broke down by year would do to your interim reports? Would that be possible?
It's possible, yes.
Yeah, I'd rather that I didn't ask for that, thank you. Is there any further discussion? No. Wonderful. Thank you again. Call the question.
Cameron, aye.
Brianna Texoni, aye.
This is
Aye. Mask on.
Falls Graph, aye. Thank you. Okay. D, agreement with Schools First Credit Union as third-party administrator for tax shelters to add Roth 403B option. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Mr. Vensko?
Yeah, so currently the district offers employees the opportunity to set aside funds pre-tax through Schools First from their paychecks to go towards a 403B account. There is currently only a pre-tax option, and the Schools First offers a post-tax option. So this is essentially just allowing the district to provide that option to employees. So the district is recommending that the board allow the district to enter into this agreement so that we can offer that to our employees.
Comments?
None.
Just, why would somebody want to do post-tax as an employee?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not a tax professional, but it's essentially, if you think your tax bracket later on in life is going to be higher, you would assume, like, hey, if I'm gonna make a lot more money later on in life, that you're trying to get your taxes paid now at maybe the lower rate. That's one just general reason, but other than that, each person's individual tax.
So it's offered as an alternate savings plan, basically?
Essentially, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're good, thank you. Call the question.
Cameron, aye.
Brianna Texoni, aye.
Yes, Susan.
Aye.
Mascot.
Falls Graph, aye. Thank you, staff. Our calendar is showing that we have a regular board meeting, January 25th, 2024, and a regular board meeting on February 8th, 2024. So we'll be back on the every 2-week cycle. I would imagine that the next board meeting will be a fairly heavy agenda. Is there anyone who anticipates that they can't be or that would affect our ability to have a quorum? Things pop up, you know that. Thank you. Future agenda items, strategic plan presentation, that's one we've been waiting for. That is scheduled for the January 25th, 2024 meeting. Is that it for future agenda items? You have the report now.
That is correct. So that would be a first read item for the updated strategic plan. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm going to, at this point, call for an adjournment of the meeting.
But, Mr. Falsgraf, I have something to add to our future agenda items.
Go ahead.
Dr. Sahakian, you have an attendance initiative, right? What is your attendance initiative called? What? To improve attendance in our district? Does it have a name?
Dr. Chamberlain, we don't necessarily have a name.
I thought there was a name used a couple months ago.
Well, I just call it attendance recovery, but it encompasses, we could call it attendance recovery.
We'll call it the Attendance Recovery Initiative. I would love, because we discussed attendance and declining ADA and all that, I would love to get a report, and it does not have to be at the next meeting. I'm hoping for like March, April, some kind of a report to the board and to the community of what each school is doing to improve attendance and how that's working out, what our attendance numbers were, what we've been doing, where they're at, and what our projections are to do.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So you need a second on your,
Do we need a second?
Let's open up our ears. Somewhere in the superintendent's report, like, whenever you decide to do that is good. And then we'll circle back to past President Taxoni and see that she's satisfied with the results I know you'll give. Anything else? Wonderful. With that, I will call for the adjournment of the meeting at...
I'm sorry, can we not have comments on this agenda?
No, you don't.
We moved them to the end, but okay. That's
But there are no comments for a special meeting.
okay.
Good? We good? Wonderful. I will move to adjourn this meeting at, it is 7:08 p.m. Is that correct?
Run month's a little bit ahead, so we're at 7:05.
Perfect, 7:05.